are you today? Good?
How does she
Like you're in a local.
In a long hot
It's supposed to rain.
Sadly, it was a short, hot walk.
This heated old, so I got you.
You live in the downtown area?
No, but I was hanging out.
Oh yeah, are you not from here?
No, from South.
Probably.
Okay,
So
cool. No way. Two of my friends are just left South Africa a couple days ago.
Decent.
Oh, wow.
They're there for a mission.
Chris Romano?
Awesome.
Chris Romano?
Cape Town.
Sorry, I mean,
I went to the last part.
Oh yeah. No, I think they used to be there. They used to live there for 3 years.
I don't.
So they lived in Johannesburg actually.
And I forget how
That's amazing.
messed
So
up.
they were on a mission trip.
Yes. So yeah, they're actually going there, stopping by, and then they're going to Uganda and Kenya to check out some potential. Well, we're kind of like building a team to go in the winter. So they're kind of going. I couldn't go, so I kind of just sent them and kind of yeah. They're scouting. Okay.
And I thought it was older.
You know what? I'm going to Boulder next week.
Yeah.
Colorado. So.
I was in Southwest. I went home outside shit. I was sitting in our office. But I did ask everyone I met to say, if I wasn't going to the city, who would you go to?
Everyone's coming here.
Might as well wait till 10.
Yeah.
Do I really want to do it?
So I'm not going to
I've got it, our church is right at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we're contracting a guy to drop it.
Okay.
And all of these might do that. You know, he showed up this morning. Oh, I hate to do that. I've got the Beatles on.
Where are you moving to in Austin? Okay. Cedar Park is nice. Nice area. I'm moving there myself next year.
Yeah, we just went on a week vacation,
But,
he didn't kill me.
Close, yeah.
Los Angeles to San Diego.
I wasn't.
So I destroyed my foot. I was trying to
Yeah,
get
you're
a
like, no.
seal and I fell down.
We have a young lady that's staying on our
That's not a good thing.
right now.
I put it in the water, it was dead.
Wow.
Well, they say butter has
No, I'm 23, so.
up to a meter. Don't worry about turkey.
Okay.
Like an hour.
No, I just, yeah. I went to UT, so I graduated. I studied biology, actually. And I was actually going to go to med school. That was the plan. And then, see, my dad is not Christian, so he found out that I was Christian then. He cut me off in every way. Financially, so I actually dropped out of UT. Oh yeah, it was bad. I had to get a job, so I started with natural for 2 years. And then saved up money, and then went back to school on my own. Finished up just for May. Yeah, it was a good place.
Well, that's
It was tough. My dad's a little better now, but it's still very tough. So actually, my mom, so my parents had arranged marriage, and so my mom came over first. So my dad came over first to study his master's in Texas. He went back to get married, came back, and then he was Hindu. My mom grew up Christian. It's arranged marriage, like she agreed to. But she came over here, she was alone, and I think she couldn't let go of God, and what did I do? Because she became a believer. So my dad has very low tolerance, like on borderline abusive. And so my mom was a secret.
We were sitting on the
And so she told me, my brother, and my sister, yeah. So we grew up Hindu at first, so she shared the gospel. Through a series of events. We had to keep a secret. 4 of us were secret Christians. friends for years. We don't post anything online. We had a little tiny Bible in our pockets. We had a secret backpack that we hid in our
Today I put out
my dad wouldn't find out
an
anything.
advisory board and they have so many.
I mean, it's crazy.
I don't know. So they asked me maybe I should read that. I have to
It was
answer.
just this committee one to do.
Advisory board.
Oh, yeah.
So like why just do it all I don't what your salary is are.
I mean, the idea of, one thing I have is cheaper and better than
Yeah.
kind of have to keep hands.
In a gym or a
It didn't hit me either. I don't really understand. Because my dad's like, okay, you're not my son anymore. You're not going to have my last name or anything. And I'm like, okay, that just sounds abstract. What does that mean? Until I'd be like, I couldn't pay for anything. So I lost all my money and I worked everything for me. And then I dropped out of UT. I was sitting there.
We had an interview 3 weeks later.
I couldn't pay
I didn't know that they did that. They have a whole
And then,
set.
even then, my dad was like, look, if you just write me a letter, he told me this, you write me a letter, and you were down.
Yeah.
You say
Punch all over the place.
and you
Yeah,
were me on Sundays.
At the end of the day,
Then I'll
especially.
give you
It's not that packed up, but like Friday like 5 till like 5 to 6.
I
walk around there and I ride my bike.
I'd be like, God, I can't like
And stuff.
it's okay. You know, it's like, I didn't know, like,
I live
you know, it's okay.
right off
That's like, my mom's like, don't say, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, that's it.
I'm just gonna trust God. So eventually, he let me, he actually had me out of the
That
house.
friends and allies
So I was
opened up
living in my
over
backyard.
there.
So you're not allowed to go in the
Can you
house.
forward that to me?
So one day, my brother is at UT. He goes back and spring break,
They have Wi-Fi there
driving
and
his
stuff
car.
too.
My mom says, look, have faith that God will make a way for you.
No, I can talk to you.
And then,
What's your story?
I'm waiting, you know, my brother's
hang out
loading things in the car, and I'm sitting there in the backyard, and my dad comes out.
Four flight, you do
If you want to go back to the
pilots.
brother,
Okay.
you can. You have 10 days to find a job. If you don't find a job in 10
iOS
days,
app and
that's it.
I work on
You come back.
we have a web
And I was like,
version.
okay, thank God. I had a way. I went there on the 10th day in Austin.
Sometimes I get into the iOS.
On day 10, I got a job at Chipotle.
Won't
So,
be as great as I.
we took a
just as a grill, just as a grill. But then a week
Yeah.
after I got that job, Chipotle announced that they would reimburse your tuition.
Greg,
You
Joel.
worked at Chipotle. So like
I
every semester you went work. So I worked full time while going to school, and I had my last year of college school.
So you must be doing your own thing?
Yeah.
And then I graduated just a few months ago. And it was like,
Just being a.
1 year ago today, I had just come back from Africa. I was in Zambia.
Right now.
My flight ended a year ago today. I came back and I was working today. I'm switching back to school. I don't even know if I can go back to school. Don't even know if I can graduate. Don't even know if I can job. And you know, God's strategy. Things out. Maybe
I
graduate.
just, see, it's one of those things that I have so many different positions and different phases.
Yeah.
Good,
It's
thanks.
good, yeah.
Days? Great.
Yeah, it's really
I think I did my best at what I was doing. Because I was doing
And Mark Control, I think it's just
Pleasure.
even if the most puts the glass down, it comes to and everything. I mean, there's the kind I've noticed that every time my dad did not use something. I had a car last year, and I was working 3 jobs. I was working in school and then a car, and he was like, "You're not getting a car unless you're going to car." And then like the day he said that, a friend of mine called me and said, "Hey, I have an extra car." You know, I just feel like every
What do I
time
do?
my dad
I'm
is
a
denied
full-time job
something,
searching again.
God is unbelievable. And he's showing, he's slowly showing, yeah, my dad is still blind. But my hope is, you know, we share in Africa, we share
I
those
signed
things
up
we buy.
a while ago, and I had to get into an event.
I feel like I have this the first time you know, like, I'm at a lot of these products for anyone. What do you do? Even if you don't have an experience, so
Right now I'm doing
still
stack web
take
development
it across
for
the nation, like,
Microsoft
cost, surprise everybody.
So,
Developing world where
For
A month ago.
or what?
I literally
Actually, I was
well,
I was going to
most pilots, so I started out with pilot pilots, that's an iOS app.
everything, and then
So rather than
I go to Africa
we branched out,
I've
but,
started to move on like to manager role, and I was like, I like the business aspect of it. I like how I just love the finance part of it. So
cart around
I
with
didn't really know I was
that.
going to do this. Then we started
Runways
this
and
agency in
landings and
Austin,
frequencies.
and that's what we said in our first team.
Now it does flight planning.
And I was just doing
Fuel
finances,
optimization.
planning.
We're into commercial now
And I was
too.
sitting there, actually, I was sitting there in that hut.
We have mostly with private commercial outfits, so we have contracts,
we
but
were
we
doing
have
other SOPs and just knowing the business. Sitting there, I was like, this is amazing.
commercial predominantly uses
I've been training,
private commercial
I did a year
uses
training here in
and
Austin.
then
Going
public
to
commercial.
that, and I've been training all my life as a this moment, and I was sitting there, and then,
So we're fairly new into
and then
commercial.
like, I was
Like
reading Bible,
some private charter services and stuff.
I know you want to be a missionary,
So we've been adding capabilities for that.
It's not even me.
Kind of like
So,
multi-user
I got on the
techniques.
flight and I talked to my leader.
So dispatcher does all the
He's
flight
got us
planning,
set up.
route optimization,
And I was like, Mark,
and then they can send it
I
out
feel
to
like
the
I'm
pilots.
saying,
The
back
pilots
to
get all their
school
flight
and
plans
do
sent
this.
to them on
I
their
was like, okay.
iPad.
And so I come back, I interact with visitors, right?
Everything radar, all kinds of overlays.
Tuition, I get involved in a lot of business classes.
All the tech stuff we have to lug around
I
into is
started
all.
working at a little venture capital startup here in Austin. And through that, me and my friend got to start our own startup. A VC startup, Texas Venture Foundation. Which ultimately didn't really go anywhere, but I just had a lot of experience. I was like, I really enjoyed doing it. And then, if you've heard of the Hyperloop, and we
did a happy hour last
for the healthcare issue, so there's a team of graduate students here that uses yes, they meet all it's crazy, and I don't even know if people from I mean, it's like it's very low pay, it's kind of a side job kind of thing. And so right now I'm still talking about the full-time position in the business relations. Like, that's what I'm just kind of praying about right now. But right now I'm focusing on what I'm doing. We're building the pod. We're going to LA next month. Somehow advance to the final 20 teams in the world.
Yeah, the work stuff that I do is more geared towards commercial. There's overlap, but the commercials are the ones, like, they want to sit down and do, it's like, so we also for those flight stuff. So all the flight planning stuff is more commercialized. It's just a private pilot flying by himself. You can do it on his device. But when you're doing it for a bunch of pilots, you do it on a computer ahead of time. You've got a bunch of flights to plan, you've got a bunch of things that you want to optimize for routes, fuel costs, and
Right now I'm just looking at it. And I saw this group on something.
most of what we do is, there's overlap for sure. A lot of the company's been around for about 10 years. I've been there for in October. Planning on retiring at the end of the year. I grew up in California. This is what I
So I have the agenda up here just so people can see it.
like Monterey. It's called
And then we'll have at 7 or at 6:50.
Not anything like
Start.
that.
Mine's kind of 6:50.
20 years.
You can start, you can introduce yourself, prayer, ask for volunteers with prayers.
I was born in Green Bay, but
You're probably going to want to do that.
my dad's in
So you can let him, whoever.
relocated to California.
Introduction, just title slide.
Outside of a short stint,
The same thing as a
cool. It's been mostly Texas.
And you're in Austin.
we're looking for sponsors, and sponsors can be people, individuals.
In Sacramento, the state college there. I didn't go to college till I
Drink
was
and hackathon.
so I worked at,
The next slide is community. Say, hey,
I didn't really care about school in high school.
everybody says they want a community. You need to be the community you want. We can create this platform for you to actually get it out. And so Slack, Facebook, and all these other things say, like you guys, like we have people in Slack, get in there and check, and plan your own events, like things like that. Share photos, then helping lead, mentioning that.
It's quite a while, maybe, so retired, I've been.
Help lead, basically,
Paper route,
we also have a North Group and South Group. Jen's kind of heading up the South Group, but we need other people to be right? Be part of that leadership there. And the same thing for the North, there's a needs people committees for each. We also need volunteers for future meetups, and organizers, so on and so forth. And help us promote.
I think I'm gonna travel abroad.
Again, this is part of the include you. It's not my
I've got places someone picked up.
what you want to do.
And actually, it was a lot of people.
Then just ask for other announcements and just say, as always, you can post on everyone chat on Slack. Same thing. Then you can introduce me, missionary, 7 years in Turkey, so director of product operations and operational.
So you have to leave.
First name,
Majority of the country.
So there's so many.
talk about
Probably like in Portugal.
why do we build products, next steps, and blah, blah, blah. Kind of go through your
So probably like
how to build a product. I never think of workshop this. They're going to discuss this question, then we're going to come back up and share their ideas. And then I'll come back and I'll do this, right? And then I'll just kind of explain some of my journey to share what I've been working on. And then I'm going to kind of set up a challenge, like an MVP in 2017, out here. Then I'll take the Q&A. Then after that, you can come up and do closing remarks, reminder, things like that. And then the slide and say, hey, you need to come over. Makes sense? Okay, so it's 6:50. Yeah, 8 minutes. So sharp. Yeah. Hey, appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Most of these, I'm not doing this until,
Welcome
Springdale again.
You can make it.
I am, man. Excited to hear you.
I think sometimes when I was younger, I was excited about seeing
My car's not here. Because I had taken it in, so that writing down. It broke.
I've heard of
It's always the worst.
Yeah.
I was coming home from the church.
Drove over to Africa, 4.5 hours.
got, you know,
Hey, man.
what's up?
How are you?
Good.
Good, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, I wish it like we're
Smart.
Yes, I know.
I'll sit right on the edge. How about that?
So, I was telling the story.
But yes,
Last week. It was actually, I was talking to
Yeah.
prior to that. Yeah.
I helped my pastor go to church, I think it was like the year I see stuff, so it's like, you get tired of my my question is, what's the point of just having this? The battery goes. He's got all this
So I did a bunch of stuff for
my flesh is you said
because I didn't know how to access it.
Just the battery.
I was just like,
My father
illustrator back then.
battery. I don't know which one, either the one prior or the one before.
Yeah. So it's for a while. And then before church.
Interstate battery, you know, it was like a little.
And then I started taking care of my dad more.
I just be wondering.
So I'm like,
And then I just started now that I'm in Austin, I just finished.
Yeah, and I don't know what that is.
I basically, she wanted me to do a transfer.
It's one right now.
But I learned a lot about it.
I still think that's right.
I was invited like Caroline.
I remember when going to
For some reason, I didn't realize they had to. So I learned a lot about
work. And now it's getting into it's like I met this new church
I noticed that the website that I can take really the numbers.
Yeah, but we have to.
So now that I have this stuff going on,
and I was like, okay, I'll see what friends I'm going to for 6 months. Right. I was like,
and I'm just, you know, I want to learn how to write out.
People certainly. Tom originally.
It makes it easy.
Most of my years there.
Everyone's looking for credit.
Basketball conferences out there, these different so forth. Travel. Kind of got to know. Quite John Blue, I just shot which is before
So I mean, most of my job is sales.
It's actually the hardest thing about doing this.
somewhere along the lines.
I don't have the irritation on me.
You see, man?
Time flies, but like that.
What do you do at church?
I'll be voting for this. Yeah, I got game of I did not get to fly out of
Machine learning.
No, it's going to work for you.
All right, guys. Anybody that doesn't have a seat, please find your way to a seat. But hi, I'm Alan Barnwell. I'm going to kind of MC tonight for Mark, who will be giving our main presentation. But if you haven't attended before, welcome. The meetings can differ from month to month. Sometimes we have panels. Tonight we're actually going to have a little workshop. So after Mark talks, he's going to lead us in a workshop exercise. So as you see in the agenda, 6:50 sharp is where I'm starting tonight. So bear with me as I'm not the most experienced MC here. So yeah, I just welcomed you. Let's start out with a prayer. Do we have any prayer requests tonight? Anybody have anything that they want to get prayer for? Well, then I need a volunteer. Can I get a volunteer to pray? Who wants to pray? Open us up. You gonna take it?
Blessings. We're so excited to be in your presence, Lord. Thank you for, we receive freedom, Lord. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. We receive it, we receive you. We receive freedom to love, Lord. Knit the bonds in between each of us, Lord. Help us to build each other up. We receive freedom, Lord, for witty inventions, clear paths forwards. Innovative imaginations, innovative ideas. Propel us, Lord. Throw us into the great unknown. Fill us with your love. Instill us with the ability to help our teammates, to communicate with our bosses, communicate with those on our job sites. Give us favor, Lord. We thank you for every testimony. Help us really give us favor for success in all of our endeavors. Help us be faithful in the path that you lead us to. We thank you for it, advance. We receive the great blessings. We love you. We love you, all of our love, all of our being, all of our life, all of our breath. We thank you for great smiles. We receive extraordinary joy. In Jesus' name.
Amen. So,
Thanks for letting me.
let me just take a moment and mention what kind of the goal of this group is. You know, when Mark kind of conceived of this, I mean, if you wanted to meet with entrepreneurs, there's plenty of groups you could go to. If you wanted to meet with other technologists, there's plenty of other groups you could go to. But, you know, I think that people who have these skills and talents don't necessarily have outlets to express them inside your local churches. And so, you know, I think one of the chief goals of this group is to provide a community and environment where you can exercise those talents for the kingdom if you're not getting to wherever you are. So obviously you can network here, you can do other things, but just keep that in mind because as you see there's a Slack, well that mentions the Slack community for this group and a place where you can post prayer requests. Well, there's a lot of other things you can do in the Slack community, and one of the goals is to build community. Because if we're going to provide an environment for you to exercise your gifts, it's going to require people actively participate in the community, and I think that's still something that we're challenged to do, and you have to walk it out every meeting and between the meetings and that type of thing. So that's the goal. I just wanted to kind of put that out there so that if you hadn't heard that before, you'd have a second. I'm going to go through the announcements. I think that one is that we want to thank our sponsors, Capital Factory, and we are always looking for additional sponsors. Sponsors could be anything from an individual to a church to any other organization. So if you know somebody that you think would be interested in sponsoring the group, we need sponsorship for the hackathon as well as just the normal meetings and the other special events that we plan. Next would be, that's more on the sponsorship. We need sponsorship for food. Sorry. On the community. So here are web addresses. If you don't know where else to look for us, please make a note of some of the different websites and where the Slack group is, the Facebook page, Twitter. Please, feel free. We encourage you to share things on social media so that we're attracting more folks. Again, it's not about pulling through people one time here. The goal is to continue to build community. So, that building community requires that we as individuals get involved, and we need more leadership in the group. So we actively encourage you to get involved, and you're welcome to join us to help lead. Running groups, we have actually a South group and a North group. Jen, who's not here tonight, heads up the South group. Mark and I both work on the North group. It's a big town and not everybody can make it to meetings either in the North and the South. Need volunteers, need help promoting, and we definitely want to network with the other churches, with all the churches, because this isn't based out of a single church. So with that, let's see who I have. Any other announcements you can see on the Slack page. Feel free to post announcements for the group. Again, it's all about getting out there and sharing. So I think I've probably buzzed through everything really quick, so I'm going to introduce Mark. So Mark Stevens started the group, how many years ago was it now?
2013.
In 2013?
Myself and Chris. And
Yeah.
a couple others, yeah.
So, the group has been around for a while. Mark has been a missionary for 7 years, is that right?
Plus, yeah.
7+ years to many nations, but one of the chief was Turkey. And so he is a product manager by trade, an entrepreneur as well. He has been the director of product for Horizons International, so a Christian ministry where he helps develop product there, and of course the founder of the meeting. And so tonight I just want to introduce Mark.
Cool. So real quick, because most of you are new. Who is new? Raise your hand. First time. Okay. And how many of you actually have created a product? And it could be like a video, could be an application, mobile, web, vaguest term of a product. How many of you have actually created something? Okay. Who has it but wants to? One person. Okay. So a few weeks ago, I talked to Jen, and she's normally leading the groups down here, and I tend to try to do the ones up north. I told her, she's going to be on vacation. I'm like, I want to lead the July meeting. And it's because I knew I wanted to talk about making impactful products for the kingdom. Now, I had no idea actually what I was going to talk about until last night when I was actually creating my PowerPoint slides. So bear with me, we might digress here and there. But I spent the last few weeks actually just prayerfully, but also just pondering it. And I have 20 minutes, to share with people, and what do I have to share? And so, you know, the topic tonight, if I can move this thing, why this isn't? Okay, we'll click. There we go. Technology will defeat us all. So the topic tonight is building impactful products for the kingdom. And, you know, this is a very loaded statement. You know, what is impact? What is a product? And what is the kingdom? And the first question, I think, is why are we here, right? Not just why are we here tonight, right? But why are we here? And, you know, I'm sure I'm talking to good Christians, and maybe not everybody is here, but we know that, you know, if you went to Sunday school and you've been in enough church, you know that our purpose is to glorify God with all of our might, right? And so I kind of unpack this, and what does it mean, all our might? And all our might means all of our skills, all of our talents, all of our intellect, all of our thoughts, all our creativity, all of our time, and all of our stuff, family, life, and work, and etc. I could have put etc. there because there's a lot more. And one of the things that, you know, as an entrepreneur and working in Austin and the entrepreneurial ecosystem for the last many years, I don't even know how many years, I've been amazed at how brilliant the people in Austin are, right? And I look at you guys, and I don't know all of you, but I pretty much can be guaranteed that you guys are brilliant in something. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here. And when I look at that, and I go to church, and I go to church, you know, frequently, and over, you know, I grew up in the church. I see people who work at software companies and who are like me, who are overly educated, and they see their biggest asset to the church is tithing. And that always rubbed me wrong, because we're to give more than a tenth, because, you know, tithe is a tenth, but it's not just your money, it's of you. And in fact, now that we're in Christ, we're to give everything, not just a tenth. And I look at these people, and I know some really brilliant Christians who work at Google and Facebook and other places, and I'm like, wow, I wish I could take that brain and use it for the kingdom, right? And I found out they actually wish the same thing too. And in fact, most Christians, every time their church comes to them and says, will you build a website? Most Christians who are technologists, the church says, can you build us a website? They sink a little, because deep down, they realize, I can do more than a website. Like, it's just like, you know, can you get my printer to work? Type of question, right? Well, I can't even get my own printer to work. I've been working on it the last few weeks. But the truth is, we're called to more. We know we have been given skills, we've been given talents, these things, and we're called to more. And so that's what I want to talk about. And I'm not going to get down into the theology in it too much, simply because I know I'm already preaching to the choir here, right? Does that look kind of like you guys? So I'm not going to give a sermon tonight. I'm going to talk about how to actually take your desires and your wishes and do something with them. Because I hate talks. I'm a big pet peeve. I go to product conferences and go ahead, have a seat, no problem. I go to product conferences and things like that, and everybody asks me, how was the conference? And I always answer the same way, and that probably annoys people. Ask me in 10 months. And the reason is because I don't care how good the speakers were, if it doesn't make me do something better, I don't care. It's worthless. I always question, I know I'm in the wrong building for this, but whether or not South by Southwest is actually worth $1,200. So again, we come back to the question is, so how do we build products that impact the kingdom? And so first I want to talk about, kind of get back to the theology of it, I lied a little bit, is that our purpose and my goal is to unleash the greatness that God the Father, Son, and Spirit has knitted us together for. And so God foreknew us, and in us He has a plan, right? And you know, I'll let pastors explain all that, you know, theological groundwork for that. But at the end of the day, God has a plan for us. And the only person who is messing up this plan, if it can be messed up, is us, right? And so we have to acknowledge that we're the roadblock, not God. God isn't keeping you from changing the world and making impact for the kingdom. In fact, God wants you to make impact for the kingdom. And that's why he's giving you these skills, these talents, these gifts, these giftings. He's imbued you with. He hasn't just given them to you. He's filled you up so that your very essence has these giftings, right?
That's right.
And that's important to understand, is that this isn't something, skills you can learn, but talents and the things and the passions and the desires and who you very are is knitted together by God, and it cannot be taken away. And so we need to remember that, because now we're going to get a little bit more to the pragmatic, is that in order to fulfill that and to remove the roadblock, we need to be ambitious people for God. And we need to realize that we weren't made for small things, because God was not made for small things. And that's one of the biggest things that I see. One of the, and you know, judge me if you want, it's okay. We're okay here. But I would see really super intelligent people, not because they made themselves intelligent. God made them intelligent. God's the God of intelligence. And they're volunteering in the parking lot at the church. And I'm like, okay, great. Go volunteer in the parking lot at church. Come, you know, direct people, park them. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're completely missing the point of what God has created in this human being. Right? Is God has more for them than just parking lot directions, right? And that's what I'm trying to get into, is that we need to solve God-sized problems.
That's right.
And if you think like solving a little problem is going to impact the kingdom, well, okay, there's another talk over there, I'm sure, right? So here are some examples of big problems. And these problems are very general, and we don't solve general problems, we solve very specific problems, but I just wanted to give you categories, right? Human trafficking, gospel poverty, community, forming community, that's a problem we're trying to solve here. Local needs, global needs, Bible study aids, communication, language translation, social justice, sexual issues, cultural needs, and other religions and outreach. And literally, our goal should be exactly what God's goal is, and what he does. Is God impacts billions intimately.
That's good. That's right.
Okay? And I'm amazed by technology, and as a product manager, I'm continually amazed by this. This might be one of the first times in history that technology and human skills and assets have come together perfectly to meet the intellectual ability of the faithful to fulfill God's own works, is impacting billions intimately. With radio and TV, you can impact billions, but not intimately, right? You just, you know, you throw out wide nets, you catch a few fish. But now technology is, well, I'm just excited. And this has been my mantra, is impacting billions intimately. And so one of the first things that you need to do in figuring out what your calling is and why you're here is to find out the worthy problem God wants you to solve. And I put 2 E's on that. That's not a misspelling. It's Old English. It's the problem. God has a problem that he has created you uniquely to solve. Now, he may have more other problems, but there's something that he has in you that he wants to work out. And so what I tell people is don't think too small. Jesus said walk on water, right? And so Paul did for a little bit, right? Until the worries of the world, and then he, you know. But when we think about this, consider God didn't say do the small doable thing. He said do the audacious thing, right? And I was practicing this today, and you know, I use the word bogus, but then it's not bogus because you can do it, right? Imagine the most audacious thing that would be impossible, but with God all things are possible. And again, if you don't think with God all things are possible, then there's another talk across the room. But of course, we don't do this out of our strength. And so there's a huge caveat here, and I just want to focus on this, is that use the fullness of the Holy Spirit. So God enables us. This isn't our thing to do ourselves. use the fullness of the Holy Spirit to discover God's desire for you, for me. And don't just simply solve human problems. Solve God's problems, like the problems that He wants to solve, right? And so, you know, humans, like I have a problem, like, you know, I'm trying to think of a problem real quick. But example of, you know, for example, just like, you know, human problems, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. Convenience issues, right? But God, we have deeper needs, and God knows that. And so these are the problems that we should be focusing on. So only when you have a Spirit-filled passion, right? So a passion that the Spirit is filling you with and to solve, can you solve a problem? And then you can make products that make impact on the kingdom, right? So first, before you start anything, you got to be working on the right problem. That's the summary of the last 3 slides. I just said you got to be working on the right problem, and that problem has to be something that you're in alignment with God on for you in your life. So let's build great products that solve these problems. And so I broke it down into several things, and this is for any of you who have never taken. Anybody familiar with product management? Okay, some, not all, so it won't be completely redone. I've taken product management and completely condensed it down to these few words, which will completely lead you wrong if you follow only these 3 words. And so what I'm saying is there's a lot more here, but these are the ones that I think are the most important. People, desired action, pain avoidance, joyous experience, habitual, and shared experience, right? So let's talk about these real quick. People. So you have a problem. Who are you trying to solve it for, right? And so in the technical terms, we call these personas, right? And there could be multiple personas, but basically you got to figure out who it is you're trying to build something for. And so taking it to the spiritual level, okay? You got to know your audience, and there's 3 types of audience, okay? And again, I'm not going to get into the theology of this. You're just going to have to trust me or stone me later. There's sheep. There's lost sheep, and then there's goats. Okay? These are your 3 mega personas, right? And so the sheep are believers, right? And they're either on fire, they're active, or they're just pew warmers, but at least they're faithful, right? So I'm not going to call them nominal. They're truly believers, but they're still in the pew. And our job, whatever we do, is to enable these people and get them to do more. Right? Not because doing is the purpose, but because it's glorifying and it's joyous to glorify God through our works. The second group is lost sheep. And these are people who may be nominal Christians. They go to church, yada, 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 but the honest truth is, let's be honest, they don't know Christ. They may be searching, they may be curious. Our goal is to help these people discover Christ. Right? And then there's goats. And these could be wolves in sheep's clothing. These could be people who have clearly rejected Christ. These could be just people who waste your time, right? And our goal is to filter these out. Whole lot of years in ministry led me to these 3 classifications. So if you ever want to talk about them, I can talk about them. But enable, discover, and then filter out, right? But once you know these people, then you want to break them into more detailed personas. And you want to know, what do they do? What are their habits? What are their thoughts? What is their lifestyle? What do they like, dislike? What is their culture? What do they see as the antithesis to their culture? What do they find to bring them comfort, and what brings them discomfort, right? So these are all things that are going to give you insights into your personas, and as you continue to flesh them out, a persona is not just demographics. A persona is a personality. And as you understand your personas, then you can start building the right product and right product features for the right people, right? So if you want to attract a community app that takes mid-20 millennial churchgoers who frequent a certain percentage of time, who are active in other groups, and you want to create an app to get them to build community and enable them to step up, that's a persona, right? And we call that persona Bob or Jane. So that's real quick on people, but you got to know who you're building it for. But then once you build it for a person, you got to question, what do you want them to do, right? And so, you know, do you want them to read the Bible? Do you want them to pray more? Do you want them to build community, come to Bible study, learn more about Christ? And so you got to understand your product's purpose is to meet their needs, solve a problem, but to get them to move to something and to do something. And so when you think about this, and I put a big warning here, okay? You got to understand the limitations of products, and I could extrapolate that to the limitations of you personally, right? You cannot build a product to save people. It's not going to work. You yourself cannot save people, right? We are in a spiritual world. So this is the difference between like Facebook, whose goal is to convert you into some type of user, right? And the reality of a situation is that products have their limitations. And so the goal of a product is to bring you to a position with enough knowledge and enough information to create an environment that's conducive for that person to make a decision. But that doesn't make them make the decision. And that's really important. So we got to understand the ethical implications of products, and I'll get to that a little bit later. And we must always remember, God saves people, products do not save people. Okay? So if you want to create an app to reach billions of Muslims around the world with the gospel, understand the goal of the app should not be to save people. Because number one, you will never be able to measure that. And you'll never be able to figure out the success rate of that, right? But number two is there's a slippery slope, I like to call hubris, that comes along with that. And you know, at the end of the day, the credit goes to God and only God alone. And we need to keep that, you know, to be healthy spiritually and to be humble. So once we create know what we want them to do, then we have triggers and hooks. And these things can be pain avoidance. So pain avoidance is a strong motivator, right? But we also have to understand that pain avoidance can also be a detractor at certain times. Sometimes people want pain. So we got to ask ourselves to figure out, you know, how to get people to use a product. We have to ask them, you know, what is keeping them from doing it, right? Or if we want to motivate them to keep them from doing something, right? Then we have to find out what is causing them to do something and how do we detract from it. Oh, this is too good. This is a good story. So I went to a hackathon. Chris runs the hackathons for Code for the Kingdom. And this was in Seattle. It was in Seattle. And I was mentoring people, going around tables. And one of these guys, this is a funny story, he was creating an app to get people to stop looking at porn. And I'm like, this is interesting, right? I don't know if you remember this one. And I'm like, well, how does this work? And he said, every time you look at porn, you tell your app. And your app learns your habits. And then it'll text you when it thinks you're about ready to look at it. And I'm like, okay. So what happens if you're in a business meeting and it sends you a message saying, don't look at porn? Right? I'm like, so you got to think about, like, what is a motivator, what is a detractor, but also what will people use and what people won't use. So, like, I understand his motivations. The motivations was great. But I'm like, when you put it in the wild, like, who would actually use this, right? You got to find better ways to motivate people, right? Yeah. So, and you know, you also need to be asking, will removing a large pain help? So just because you remove a large pain, maybe it won't help. Maybe there's something else that's actually a hindrance. So you got to dig deep and understand your users. Will adding friction to the process weed out the wrong people? So at my last company, we had an onboarding of signing up people through a wizard. And the first form, we got your email address, and we learned that your email address and your IP location. And from that, we would send you down two different paths. If you did not have a luxury IP email address, which would be like Yahoo, Hotmail, and something like that, we would send you down the pit of despair, right? If your IP address was certain countries, I won't name them, we would send you down the path of despair, right? And so one path if we thought you met these criteria, we would send you the happy route, right? And if we thought that you were going to be the painful user or the painful customer, we would send you down the dark path. You could get out of the dark path, right? It just required a long form that no one almost ever filled out, right? And if they filled it out, then we were like, these people are highly motivated. So maybe they're not so dark, right? So maybe we'll make them a customer, right? So adding friction sometimes is something you want to do. So just don't think removing pain is the goal. Sometimes you want to add pain at the right moments. And then what you want to create is moments of joyous experience. I love this video. I was playing on Giphy and I couldn't resist. And so one important thing about creating delightful experiences is, of course, they have to be delightful, but a key thing to them is they need to be unexpected. If your app is continually delightful, they'll get bored really quick, because then it comes expected, and then they never get excited about new things, right? So they need to be unexpected, and they need to be irregular, which means that you might do an action at one time, and you might get some really cool hearts floating up on your screen. I'm thinking of Facebook for some reason. And you might do it again, and it won't happen. What? What happened? Right? What studies have found that creating unexpected, irregular, joyous moments gets people addicted to apps because they're looking for it. And they click and they click and they click and they're trying again, right? And addiction to apps are, and this we get back to what I said before, is you have to create ethical products. And apps could be web, and I just want to say product could be a video, it could be mobile, it could be web, it could be a lot of different things, so, read this into your own context. But they could be heavily addictive. But one of the things you want to do is actually create joyous moments. And now we're talking about habitual. Great products get people intrigued, create moments of unexpected, interesting joy, and they trigger it and they're hooks and they pull them in deeper. The ethical question here is, of course, is this right? Is this a good thing to do, right? Just because you can get more engagement, just because you can create a habit doesn't mean it's the godly thing to do. So as believers and as a product manager, I'm always asking these ethical questions, and I actually promote these within my product community, that we need to think about the ramifications of what we do. And I would argue that the polarization in our own country is caused by companies like Facebook and Twitter, which get people to express their opinions and create the extreme opinion, so they get more likes, which creates more extreme opinions, which gets more likes. And over a 10-year period, we created what we have today. And the final thing is you want your product to be reproductive. And so great products get people to share it with more and more people, and they also use it again and again. And so this is really important, is products should not be isolated silos. You need to find a way to create communal, and I'll get to this a little bit more, but create a communal experience. How can I get people to tell others, but not just have a share button, because share buttons are worthless, nobody does it. It has to be, you have to create a moment of that joyful moment where someone says, I want to share this, and oh, by the way, the magical moment, the button, the prompt to share appears. So these are contextual moments to share or to bring someone else into that moment at that time. So it's not just share buttons, it's a lot more contextual. So I can dig into that more later if you guys want. But we have to understand that you're wonderfully made with a creative mind. God made that creative mind. He made your intellect. He made your talents. And He's given you the ability to take on skills and to be really brilliant people. There's nothing to be ashamed of that. God did it. But we have to remember that only we are, and only you, are keeping ideas unrealized. And so the summary of everything is just build it, right? And so to do this journey, 2 points. I'm a big believer in community. To do this journey, God is, if one of the things in the Bible is community. Acts 2:42-47. some of my most important verses that I've tried to follow and tried to find. But community is really important because we cannot live alone. And you cannot build products alone, you cannot impact the kingdom alone. And it comes also because of the second point, is that this is not a, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? And Satan isn't really necessarily against them, right? And so this is a spiritual battle, and Satan is very well aware of what you're doing. And trust me, I know people who have been in technology, including myself, who have whoppers of stories that can only be counted as spiritual warfare. And so don't discount that. Be in community and understand that this is a battle and this is a war. This isn't just free market problems. This is free market and spiritual problems. So a couple resources I recommend is the book Hooked by Nir Eyal. Great guy, great book. His blog, if you don't want to read the book, read his articles on Medium. They have videos. He throws a conference called Habit Summit. It's talking about creating habits and products. And he also gets into the ethical implications of this, which is why I absolutely love it. There's also product meetups here in town. Product Tank Austin, which is also I'm a co-organizer for. Plugging my own other meetup. And Product Austin. So Product Tank Austin, and then Product Austin. And we'll talk about creating products and things like that, and product management, but there's other things you can learn from it. And hackathons. So there's a lot of hackathons in town. We actually put on hackathons. It's a great place to get that idea moving. And then of course Austin is very well known for the startup community. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to do a workshop. You're going to take what I just talked about, all these bunch of steps, and I would like you to create groups of 2 to 3 people. Don't go more than 3. And I would like you to talk about what you think are some problems worthy of being solved. And I hope that the Lord has already been speaking in your ear way before today. Because odds are, if he wasn't, you probably wouldn't have shown up. And also talk about how you feel uniquely qualified. Now we're all, just I want to be this clear, this is why we need community. We're not completely qualified to do this, right? I just want to make that clear. But we are uniquely qualified in certain ways to bring these solutions about. And so talk about those, because obviously we need help. And then talk about, then some ideas, possible solutions to solving these problems. And it doesn't have to be a website, it doesn't have to be a mobile app. It could be a physical product, it could be a video, it could be a marketing campaign, it could be whatever, right? So use the concept of product loosely there. And then there's the categories I listed there. So we're going to meet back together in 15 minutes, and I will be asking you to share. Go!
Do you want us to build the app as well?
Build it in 15 minutes? Yes.
Do 2. Let's see if we You want to be an arborist?
I can. Actually, I'll just listen because I already have too many ideas.
You said, okay, you listen to us.
Okay, I'll listen.
I'm a friend.
I stopped in I just got out yeah, I'm actually working on it's called Love and Tightly. So we identified people that spend 60+ years data.
One of the hard things so we went to an orphanage
and the whole part behind that is to regain
so like if I was running an orphanage, I could say we need to. So what happened is they would have this room full of stuff that they could donate. So it's like, I can just take it to also go on the so I can serve, right? And then I can send it to them.
I'm not so I'm going to give you a
know about this side.
I was recently at a meeting where there were a bunch of talking about dating. And that skewed my view of what you were saying. So tell me a little bit again about what you're is it an app? Yes.
It's a web app.
So it's existing relationships. People interact with the existing relationships.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
Yeah, very much inspired by that.
Sign up and then they can just almost like a Craigslist, right? Here's things I need. Somebody else you want to join, you go see it, and they can even just like
Some related exercises. I don't know if it was last week or when it was last meeting or the meeting before, but Jen had one of her contacts that came was a couple that dealt a lot with marriage, like marriage. Helping people take their relationships. Yeah. Anyway, it just made me think that that would be a great couple of
So I was taking the warehouse.
But anyway, getting back to this, so I'm trying to do the exercise.
Do the homework.
Are we supposed? So I could just hang on her thing. Do I need to like give an idea? Well, so let me just. I can sit here and I can like think of a thing. Honestly, in my mind, there's something that it's actually not an app. Not an app designed to try and solve the big problems with the app. It's actually an assistant app for something that I'm doing, which is addressing a large problem. I come from I actually come from equipment sales side. And you have my part is very smart. It's sending out so many powerful messages, and those messages grow, and it keeps doing so much good, and it's doing so much powerful. And so, one of the ways I I'm pursuing it right now is that I've got a trade show literally this week. I'm trying to make a decision about whether I'm going to do this trade show or not. But this trade show could be a very thing for getting me into a position to really be around some of the biggest movers and shakers in the industry. So what I was thinking about was that the idea of help with an app for the trade show. So I know that sounds weird, but that's kind of my way of instead of just trying to pick randomly, that would be my idea for a product right now. So I was just thinking about it. Even before this video, I was thinking like, how would I ever create an app for this event actually takes place in South by Southwest. So we literally have to build an app by
Unless it's stuff based off of 2020.
Right.
I'm looking at I decided. So I'm a product manager at not necessarily consumer, but something that there is a human. So I'm interviewing like we're getting people anyway.
They needed you.
They did. But anyways, actually had a call with user research. Oh no, it was just that was interviewing. But I last thing I looked at was called Compound, and I was in charge of the experience. Clients that were vetted, and I was in charge of the onboarding process and talent to the client. How are we going to new well, it's not really. It should have been cool, right? Unfortunately, the company made it so not industry.
So you mentioned, I think we're actually I thought, for some reason, when you started, I thought it was friends and I got that image.
I could talk to you about my grad company that started with unbelievers, and the sad part is we both the unbelievers and believers both simple contact, and the reason that everything they did, I wasn't shocked by. Right?
When a believer does it, it seems so critical.
Okay, so what's that? To engage and how? So I know some people say never start I don't school first. Hey, a business, you gotta make sure you're on the right same vision, same goals, same focus. All the parties involved are level-headed the same.
Irregardless.
As long as the believer and non-believer knows they're participating in their life,
Because it may be a but it's not like real business. So you have to build it.
I was in Stone for a while, but now I'm
I'm Florida, yeah, we're one of the but actually, so we're going over there to
breakout session. Right, where I heard,
interaction finding sometimes. I have,
so the way that I have
I've always prayed for something to happen because it's so great. People are amazing, but it's also so
I've always thought about being I'm good at it. I'm good at but see, you gotta be great, right? So I have enough skills to be good. Great, I have to go through these.
Okay, so are you 25? From Houston?
It is, but you'd have to get 25, 37 or whatever. Yeah, 25, whatever year. That's one of the other things. I've been involved in Christian worship. So your parents were not yeah. But you know,
yeah, so did that. I was trying out other types of
it's like the world that goes. So that's
Bring them all in. Now they got them. It's like,
I ever have to go back, I have
Okay, let's wrap this. shop up. Whisper. Finish that sentence. Okay. So, now you spent 15 minutes doing something. Hopefully it was what I asked you to do. Who would like to come up and share for 1 minute their idea, their product, problem, at least problem. You don't have to have I don't expect you to have a well-formed idea, right? But just share like something that, a problem you're trying to solve, and how you think that, this might be something that you're called to solve. Please don't tell me you're called to it unless you've been thinking about it before tonight. But you're like, I might be. Like, you can use the word might, right? Please don't make any lifelong decisions tonight. And kind of how you think that solution might play out. Okay. You need people. You got 1 minute, I'll time you, it'll buzz you. Come on up. You can form a line right here. Come up here, you gotta come up here. We're live. Millions of people are watching us. Millions. Hello, millions.
Are you not coming in?
Okay. So, I'm gonna go ahead and let you start now.
Okay, so, do you want me to just go?
Yeah, you can start and then I'll.
Okay, well, we've been discussing as far as news is concerned that media is, with the print media, is moving away from that, and people are looking for a new way to get their news. So the idea, can we use this?
Definitely, whiteboards are lovely.
So this is U news, and the U is a light bulb, and it's news. So it's enlighten yourself, and it is so it's news that's the real news done in like Saturday Night Live type skits. So it might be a song with the words changed, but it is the actual facts for the news. It's not like it's just a pretend kind of thing. Is that time up?
Yeah, you can finish your thought.
That's it.
Okay. I don't know how to get it to
You want to
stop.
say something?
I just was going to say, yeah, and just kind of, it's channeling a lot of the positive energy that people have in terms of, people, for better or worse, are very concerned about a lot of these issues, and channeling that into a much more productive direction than our current media, social media, all that climate tends to channel it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you. Who's next? Yeah, come on up. You don't even have to raise your hand. Just start coming up and get in line in the middle if you want.
First off, we have to all welcome Harris as a new Austinite.
Hey,
Welcome.
that's a rousing.
Yes. I always like to welcome people. I mean, a lot of people from Austin are from somewhere else. We all had our first days. So my name is Karen, and actually I have been thinking about mine for a little while. I started off a couple years ago in that room over there, in the talk that was over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started over there in a 3-day startup, and had some people come to my team and help me channel this, and I've sort of dabbled at it. But I do feel as though I've been called to it, as it's had its sprints and stalls and sprints and stalls. Problem that so your talk inspired me to try to think about it differently. It's a problem-solving trust, and it's actually in the name. It's called trustbetter.com. So the whole shared economy as we know it, this would sit kind of in the center of the universe of the shared economy, right? It is your third profile. We have our social profiles, we have our professional profiles. This is your economic integrity profile. And you currently have a credit score that is your economic integrity profile, but you don't really control that. The banks control that, that's Experian, all of that. This is something that you as a user in the shared economy control. And it allows you then to build trust with other property owners as a property user. And thus tell other property owners as you use in the shared economy that you are trustworthy. And as I see myself, I never really focused it into the Christian mindset, but I am, and I started thinking about, one of the aspects of it is the retail aspect, and to be able to communicate and be a much more available source for places like the Mardel Christian Books because one of the ways in which you use it is you're rewarded by retailers for taking action on the site. So being a place for a Christian bookstore to advertise easily and openly to trustworthy and spread that infusion of trust throughout our culture and do it with a Christian core would be very important to me.
Cool. Thanks.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm Pradeepan, recent UT grad. Anyway, there we go. So I think one of the problems that I've seen, I've spent a lot of time in ministry here in Austin, and also around very smart people in college and in med school and grad school, and I think I've seen a lot of very ambitious, very talented people, kind of like you were saying, and me and some of my friends are trying to put together this internship / study abroad internship that's UT recognized, where people would go and they would partner with a local nonprofit or a startup or a clinic or something overseas or local here in Austin in their field that they want to go to, whether it's medicine, engineering, any STEM or music, social justice, and they could work with in their using their degree, and they will be trained by professors at UT, but they're also being trained by staff in mission and disciple making and things like that, so that when they go out into the vocation, they're not just. I see a lot of students facing this problem where they're either just really ambitious, they want to just get a job, and they just, the parents pushing to get a job, they need to get a nice job, a nice internship for the summer, or a lot of them will want to do, okay, I like this mission idea, and I want to give all my time to it, and I want to raise support and go full time, but kind of bridging that together, so that, you do both, so.
Awesome. Thanks. Anyone else? Come on up. Come on down. Price is right.
So I have no title or anything for it, but it's more of an opportunity for really high school students, and when they do summer camps. Right now I always feel like church is here and then your summer camp is here, so I run STEM camps right now. And just the logistics side of it, of being able to take an opportunity for students to either learn how to create an app, learn how to make a wearable, learn how something in STEM, but infusing it with, I say, the Christian side. So just almost like normal recruiting, but being able to talk to them about Jesus at the same time, and how when you get through this problem that you can pray about it and he'll help you through it. So I don't want to say it's like an app, it's more of the overall program and not having God separate from it. Because like I said, doing camps right now, I'm listening to some of the things that the students are going through, and I'm just like, if I could just share Jesus with you, this would be so awesome. So being able to recruit, and they're coming in because they want to know this, learn this skill, this new STEM skill, but at the same time teaching them Jesus.
Cool. Awesome. Come on up. And again, that is a product, right? I mean, it's a curriculum, it's a course, it's a program, right? So again, use the word product loosely. Hey, the new guy.
The new guy.
Thank you for filling up our streets again.
Yeah, well, doing all we can. So my idea is I think pretty simple. One of the important things that churches need to do is build community, and they need to build community where people are. One place that everyone is during the week is email. And I've yet to go to a church that does great email marketing. You don't even need to build a tool. There's a million tools that do this. But I think especially a lot of big churches are leaving a lot of money on the table because the one time they ask you to give is when you're at church. The PowerPoint, I'm not at my computer, I'm not thinking about, you may think about tithing, but it's not convenient to just do it online. But I think you could reach more people with community and good messages, but also get, more money just by doing great email marketing campaigns. Simple. Go increase your church's contribution by 10%.
Anyone else?
So we got to talking about problems worth solving, and we ended up all agreeing that homelessness is a problem worth solving. And believe it or not, we figured it out in 15 minutes.
Congratulations, let's go home.
So we decided.
That's a miracle, man.
Yeah, well, the solution we decided is not money or houses in the abstract, but it is a word that we've been saying a lot today, community. Oftentimes, I don't know if, it's not really commonplace for people to really engage with people that are living on the street in a really meaningful way, partly because you're probably in your car, and they're also not generally the easiest people to be around in my experience, and other people's experiences as well. But that doesn't mean they don't need help. So what we decided is that if we could figure out a way to connect these sort of connectionless people to other people who do have a genuine intention to help, and at the very least make a real impact on their personal experience of life rather than a transactional experience, that would be really great. So if anybody has any ideas on how to do that, come talk to myself before we break, and I'll jot them down and we'll keep them brewing.
Nearly time myself. Right, how's it guys? So just, I'm from South Africa, so just some context out of that side. I know a whole bunch of pastors in that Southern African region. Just to give you an idea, they walk for 2 or 3 days. I didn't realize this. They walk for 2 or 3 days every 3 months to go and collect just 2 pages of the New Testament. And they all get together in a small room, and one guy teaches them some context about those 2 pages. Those pastors go back to their villages where they teach up to 10,000 people for 3 or 4 months with just those 2 pages, and there's nothing more or nothing less. And you want to get the next version, they got to walk back to go and get the next piece of the New Testament. So one of the problems, I was thinking, this is a huge problem, by the way, and it's not just in Mozambique, it's apparently over 1 billion people learn this way. So one of the things I was thinking about, it's actually very expensive for a Bible to be translated. It costs more than $1,000 for an individual Bible. It actually gets stolen and sold in the dodgy markets. So an Android device, a bunch of YouTube videos that get translated into the local language, sitting on an 8 gig SD card, it costs a couple $100. You can have that given to a pastor. You can go away and watch hours and hours and hours and hours of commentary or video, basically how we all learn about the Bible. And maybe that's one way. I think I've got a minute, that's up. So yeah, so there's options there. Big problem. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sophie. So every year Americans spend $3 billion on online dating. And yet we also spend $20 billion on divorces every single year. And there's tons of apps and services out there that help us start relationships, but very few that help us stay in them. And so Love Intently empowers couples to build stronger and deeper relationships by taking the guesswork out of showing they care. We really get to know you and learn how you best give and receive love. We pair that with your personal data and personal interests, giving you both tangible ways to excel at loving each other day to day. Because we understand that we live in a very busy and noisy world, and it's not that we don't care, but that we simply just forget to do the little things that matter most. Ooh.
Awesome.
It is a real.
She's actually doing it.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
That was great.
That was great. That's a well-practiced celebration. I want want to get married just so I can use it.
Yeah,
I'm pulling up loveandtilly.com right now.
I was there for that.
Who else? You don't have to be that good.
So I'll explain this in a minute. It's a hard problem to solve, but it is something I thought about for a while. I was in Guatemala once, and we went there to visit an orphanage, and we visited a school. And one of the things we ended up finding was that the school had like 20,000 pencils, and this orphanage had like, and so we ended up bartering a deal between the two of them because they just store up all this stuff that they get, and they don't have a use for it. And so trying to find some way to better get people hooked up to where the things that you have to give and the people that need it could be done more efficiently, but also more personally and more relationally. So on a local basis, instead of just going and dropping things off of goodwill, if you could find out somebody that actually needs it, and you go meet them and give it to them and have a way to actually interact with that person and have, even if it's only a small, short communication, there's still something more personal about that, and building relationships and sharing faith is about relationships. So trying to make it less about the deduction and about the ease of getting rid of it is more about meeting somebody who needs it and actually experiencing that. So
That's an idea, that's a problem that has come up again and again and again and again at hackathons.
I saw that. I saw like 2 or 3 years ago somebody actually came in 3rd place trying to do something like that with a website.
But as far as I know, it's never gone live, things like these. So
Yeah.
like it's still a problem that needs solved. You know, so who else? Just yeah.
So we pretty much got to, my name's Dan, Dave, and Bob. So I think we were, well, let's say, divinely knit. We began to just speak about the youth. We know that that's one of the biggest topics. How are we ever going to grow as Christian faith or churches if the youth are not engaged, if the youth are left behind? People have been saying that, but I love how it was the founder of Young Life in 1941, I believe, said, it's shocking the youth are no longer engaging with things of this church community. So if we didn't identify what the problem was in 1941, we're far too ahead of that moment. The time has passed and we are far, far behind. I once said with another Christian brother, sometimes the church we're so far behind that we actually think we're ahead. So we have to really, really look at what culture does. I say the Trinity of young people is not the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's music, fashion, and sports and culture, or sports and entertainment. So I think between Bob, who grew up in music in the church, Dave, who grew up being a missionary with sports, and myself, which is Christian apparel, we want to focus on that Trinity and maybe cause an effect that we would call more, instead of culture shock, culture cloth. And when we really equip, how do all these things work? That we're constantly independently really good at. Like, there's great Christian music labels. There's great Christian brands. Money's going into that. There's great Christian publishers. But they very rarely work really well together. And I've been in some of the biggest places. We don't know how we would put it together. But even going in Young Life in Nashville, they don't know how to do it yet. So that would be kind of our passion. What would that look like? How would that communication begin and that community ultimately thrive? To bring back a generation, to rescue them, and bring them into the kingdom rather than into dead religion. So that's kind of our passion.
Anyone else? Going? Gone. Okay, cool. Well, I'll share a little bit about my journey here. I want to use the whiteboard so much, and
It's over there. Right,
sir,
sir.
I know, I actually want to.
Oh, okay.
The blue failed apparently. Sorry to erase your news. But this brown doesn't. Oh, that works. Okay. So I don't even know if I'm going to use it. I just like it. I have one in my office. I always hold this. So my journey, and this is kind of to inspire you, because I've seen some people say, someone's going to trip on this, and I'm going to yell at. So,
Anal retentive couldn't
yeah, Mark, you killed someone. So I was a missionary for 7 years in Turkey, and before Turkey, I was an archaeologist, and that's when I first went to Turkey. And the Lord put in my heart, in a very powerful way, Muslims. And so I have a very big heart for the Muslim world. And so I spent 7 years there, and literally they beat the snot out of me. Literally and figuratively and emotionally and all ways possible. But I came back in 2008 thinking, you know what, I'm not done there yet. I'm not done with ministry. I'm just here for recuperation. It's been a long recuperation. And so I started a software company in Turkey. That's one of the things I was teaching entrepreneurism over there to churches and persecuted individual Christians. That's what I put on my resume, persecuted individuals. Christians who went from Islam to Christianity, and they're persecuted, they don't have jobs. And the church asks, we need people to teach business. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I could do that. How hard could it be? So I went over there, learned Turkish, and started teaching it, and then quickly I learned that I've never started a company in Turkey, so what am I talking about? So I started a company in Turkey, a software company. So when I came back here, I continued my software company, and my goal was to get more people to go overseas. And I learned a lot in that 7 years of what to do and what not to do. And I realized that no matter how good I was, no matter how, every moment I was proclaiming the gospel, I could not reach the 80 million Turks in Turkey. Just impossible. And in fact, if every missionary in Turkey did the same thing, there's no way. I would have to reach 232,000 people intimately with the gospel. And I was like, yeah, no, not going to happen. And so I started thinking about how to do this, and I came up with trying to figure out, how can I, and this is what I really think my calling is, how can I reach billions of Muslims in the world, en masse, all of them, at least a good percentage of them, intimately. And I think up to this, people talk about radio ministry, I'm not knocking these ministries, so don't get me wrong, but, radio ministry, Facebook ministry, and TV ministry, and they all have different strategies, but I think they all miss this mark. TV is very, it's beaming to the whole Middle East, but who's watching it, right? It takes me forever to find the Christian channel in the middle of the Middle East, right? And then I find it, and it's completely boring. It's like English dubbed, and you're like, yeah, okay, this is bad. Radio, who turns to these channels? There's dozens and dozens of radio channels. And quite frankly, it's a very, people have to be looking, right? And even then, they have to be entertained. So I was thinking, how can we do this? Because ultimately, and on the other end, it's one-on-one. So you have people on Facebook who are answering questions of Muslims. Well, it's still a one-to-one relationship. I can reach one person. And so I was thinking, how can you reach Muslims en masse? And in a meaningful way. And so, long story short, I created a product called Christianity 101 for Muslims. And it's a training course. And to do this, I went on staff with Horizons International as Director of Product Development. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to start creating products that are going to change the world for the kingdom. Just like every single other person who goes into ministry thinks you're going to change everything. And then reality hit. Well, two things hit. Reality hit in that I actually have to raise grants for this. And then the second reality hit, it's called ISIS, right? And ISIS, I think you've heard of ISIS. Maybe you've heard of ISIL. Maybe that's the appropriate term. I don't know. But basically, all this refugee crisis happened throughout the whole Middle East and Europe. And all of a sudden, all funding went to refugee relief. And I'm not against that. I'm all very much for refugee relief, right? And especially our center and headquarters in Beirut, Lebanon, is baptizing people right and left. So it's kind of hard to complain about money going to them and baptizing people right and left, right? But I definitely see technology and the use of technology as very strategic. And it's only going to get more and more strategic. And so I started trying to convince people like you to join Horizons. And it's like, I can get my software people, I can get my technologists, I can get my user experience designers. You know, they love Jesus, they'll come on staff. And then I realized they're making 120 plus K, thereabouts, a year, and you want me to raise support? And then I realized, oh yeah, I did that too. And yeah, it wasn't very successful. And then I realized there's another problem. Churches are incredibly unfaithful to people in ministry. And so, two things happened at the same moment. I went to a hackathon, Code for the Kingdom, the first one in Austin, and I wasn't planning on staying, and I presented an app called the Gospel app. I have a huge backlog of products, so you guys don't have a lot, you know, I have a lot of products if you need one to work on. And the Gospel app was an iPad app that's for short-term teams to basically create your own story so they can take it, it would be in the language of the people, and how they answer questions takes them along this different journey to the end where it asks for their phone number, and then it'll basically have someone who's local follow up with them if there's a person who's interested in the gospel. And if it's not, then you know the story ends, right? It's very simple. And the greatest thing is short-term teams don't need to know the language. It's in the language. Second great thing is everybody loves an iPad. They all come around and look at it. So this is what we created. The hackathon thought it was a great idea, and we built it in the weekend. And I was floored, because I realized this hackathon in 48 hours built something I hadn't been able to do in 2.5 years. Ooh, that's painful. I realized I needed to change course. So that's why I promote the hackathons now. And that's why I created this. Is because I realized I don't want you guys to leave your job. I want you to stay working at these great companies. I don't want you to go in full-time ministry. I want you to be in full-time ministry and work.
That's good.
Right? Because on the weekends you can build stuff that I could never accomplish in full-time ministry because of various other things. In fact, I don't want your money. If you want to give it, I can take it. But I want you. I want your brains. I want your skills. I want your talents. And not full-time. Because you have, like, your table scraps are enough to reach the world. I just want you to know that. Your table scraps of your time and your knowledge are enough to reach the world. In 48 hours, a ragtag team put together a prototype of this app, of which is not launched, because after that I didn't have anyone. It's a prototype, it's on GitHub. And so after that I realized I cannot bring people on staff. The second thing I realized is that at the same time, funding is a problem, and it's only going to get worse because the 501c3 status is going to go away. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but it's going to go away, and nonprofits are already having a tough time raising funding, right? And the end of the goal is I don't care about funding, I care about what those nonprofits are doing. But we have to be reality that it takes funding to make these things move. And so that also inspired me to create something called Gospel Funder, which was a crowdfunding site. I started in 2009. I was working with the Austin Stone at the time to create a thing to send their 100 people off. Gospel Funder launched for 17 months, and it worked great. We needed to change some business model, and basically I had to take it down. We rebranded it and called it generous.org because I wanted it to be more than faith-based, because I want to take the money from all the non-faith-based people and funnel it towards faith-based things. So, anyways, generous.org. And we rebuilt it, and the day we were going to launch, literally the day we were going to launch, push it to Amazon, AWS, and launch this thing, brand new relaunch, I called the developer, the CTO, who's up in Calgary, Canada, and in the morning he's like, yeah, we're going to launch today. I'm just finishing up some things. I'll push it to AWS, and you'll be able to play with it then, and then we'll go live. A few hours later, he calls me. I'm like, hey, are we live yet? I mean, are we up yet? He's like, no, my house exploded. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, my house just exploded. It's gone. I grabbed I just ran out, and as I was running out, it exploded. The house is gone. The fire department's here. And I'm like, why are you calling me? Like, you be safe, right? And call me later, right? So long story short, it wasn't backed up.
Oh my gosh.
Generous was blown up. Now, of course, the worst thing is his whole house, his dog died, his family was out Christmas shopping, but everything was destroyed. And this is what I wanted to remind you about, is that this is not just bad business model problems, okay? This is Satan knows what you are doing, and he wants to utterly blow you up. Literally, he wants to destroy you. And that guy, my friend, is very lucky he survived. Okay? And I have no question in my mind, because that was not the only, like, it was a streak of just bad things. That's not luck anymore. It's like, it's not bad luck, it's something's out to get us, right? And we even had a prayer support team for this product. Generous is gone. It was destroyed. I tried to reboot it for 8 months. My friend just couldn't do it. The insurance company was fighting him the whole time. So I decided to go back into the corporate world, do what I'm telling everybody else to do to stay. It's like, I'm going back to the corporate world too. I can make more money and maybe make better impacts. And so I went to work at a company called Hanson. But Generous is not gone and dead. We took over and created an app called Generous Sharing, which was at a hackathon in San Francisco. It's about it's like Instagram, but every time you share, it costs you something, and that goes to it's like a donation to the person who's like, so missionaries could post pictures, and if you share it, things like that. It's basically liking costs, $1 or something like that. We created a thing called Generous Prayer. I think it was actually, I pitched a Generous Prayer at one of these meetings, and an investor in the group said, I want to invest in that. And I'm like, that doesn't make any money, right? It's a prayer app. You can't charge for prayers. Because it's ultimately, we want to create an ecosystem. And he said, yeah. We basically hired a dev team, and the dev team took 2.5 years to build it. They never finished. I fired them. Simply because it was the wrong dev team, and we couldn't get out of it, and it was bad. Now, do I think they were like Satan spawn? Maybe, I don't know, but it was definitely a bad experience. So what I'm telling you is, you've got to do your ideas, but don't think it's easy, right? And don't give up, because I have all these other apps planned. My goal for this year is to create a Generous Church app for Apple TV, which is basically, you can run church from your Apple TV. Videos, music, worship, giving, tithing, to create a home church movement that's basically run from your TV, right? And so, but things happen, and I haven't been able to get that jump started yet. But what I'm saying is, like, this is still my goal, right? But I realized in order to get this goal, there's a lot of other things I need to do to meet this goal. And so figure out what it is that God has called you to, but know that this is the big problem. And it's a very specific problem, but it's a very big problem. But there's a lot of things that need to come together in order to solve this problem. Nonprofits need to be funded, right? Technologists need to be freed and know that their intellect is something they need to tithe. Your skills and talents is something that needs to be tithed, so that things like this can be created, or better things than this can be created, right? And so that's why I do this talk about once a year. And I try to talk to people like, God has more for us. And He has something for you. He has a vision. He has a purpose. And just because it failed doesn't mean it wasn't from Him, right? And doesn't mean it's failed forever. I'm still working on Generous Prayer. By the way, I need Android, iOS, and web thing. We have the code. We just need to fix it up and make it run. But anyways, there's just lots of things to do. And so my challenge to you, I was actually going to give this talk in January, but it got bumped. But you can still do it, because you got a good 5 months. Take your idea, come up with your idea, whatever it is, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's a website, whether it's a program, whether it's a video, movie, whatever it is,
and make it MVP or MVE in 2017. And let me explain that. MVP is, who doesn't know what an MVP is? Okay, minimal viable product. So basically find out what is that unique thing that you're trying to solve, what's the smallest thing you can do to try to solve it, and build it. Simplest thing, doesn't have a lot of features, and the very simple essence, the minimum viable product, right? But I also encourage you to create something else even before this, which is the minimal viable experiment. So an experiment is something that you will throw away, right? But it teaches you something. And so, for example, generous prayer was not my goal. Generous prayer was an experiment to see how can I encourage people to pray more, what are the user behavior patterns around prayer, so that I can ultimately create a better app in the future, right? It wasn't even my minimal viable product, it was an experiment that got funding and it kind of bloated. It never got built. But think about, what is your minimal viable product or minimal viable experiment? You don't even have to create, you can on paper do like drawings and do usability tests with an experiment. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to buy coders, right? It's very simple. You can make simple things online. It's super easy. Another thing is, join with other people here, right? Is that one of the reasons I believe my products and my ventures failed is because I did not have the right support team. So serious. I really did not feel like I had, like they always say, you need to have the right bus, you need to have the right people and the right seats on the bus, right? And my bus was pretty much empty, right? I didn't even know if I was in a bus. Maybe I was delusional or something. But, you got to work with others. God blesses it when you work with fellow believers on an endeavor. Now, that does not mean, and I know people talk about this, don't work with non-believers, right? But you need to be on the same page, right? When I worked with non-believers, they very well knew what I was doing and why I was doing it, right? And a lot of them like, yeah, I'm totally for that, right? I'm not a Christian, but I'm totally for that. And I'm like, I'm totally for you being totally for that, right? Also, we need to realize in order to impact the kingdom, you can't procrastinate, right? You can't put it off. You can't say, I'll work on that next month or next year or whatever. You got to do it. Even little bits, little steps, because they add up. And the fourth thing is, I want to encourage all of you, right, is we tried to do this a year ago, and it utterly failed, is throwing a hackathon. And it failed because at the last minute, I got called away on a company trip. And I realized I was a linchpin. I should not be a linchpin. I am not a linchpin. That's why I actually stuck back from leadership a lot from this group. I got Jen and Alan and others to start filling in, and I'm kind of like the grandfather. I can have all the opinions I want, but I really don't matter. And so I just make appearances. But I would like you guys, if you feel like this is something worthy, because this is what we did tonight. We just threw a hackathon. Believe it or not, this was a hackathon. Throw a hackathon. Form the group yourself. If some of you feel like this is something like you want to grow in Austin, desire for believers to produce, instead of just throwing money at problems that ultimately don't get solved, but to solve problems themselves with their intellect, throw a hackathon. And it's your responsibility. It's not my responsibility to organize it, right? I'm more than happy to help, but I'm not leading. Because when I lead, then people expect me to do it all, and I don't do that anymore. So if you feel like people have come up to me, oh, we were waiting for you to do that. No, I'm waiting on you to do the hackathon, right? I will have the people to support you. I will have the people, we will do it together as a community, because as an individual, it failed, pretty much. So that's my challenge to you. And any questions? We don't run out of time. I knew this was going to run long tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't speak up on an idea that we discussed, but I think Dennis's idea deserves light of day here, so
sure.
Address that. We're all three entrepreneurs. We were talking through. I guess John's more of a CTO. I'm more of a CMO, and Dennis is more of a serial entrepreneur, and brought up a pretty good problem to tackle. And it is how to fight the trend with millennials that are just not giving, and how to motivate them to give. So he's developed an app that is, and this is my kind of first time to even see the deck, but it's going to launch, is it August? August. Cool. Okay. So it's an easy mobile app with built-in, it's viral gamification, using existing consumer social media activity to measure their donation influence, and then provide a customer relationship to promote future business. So one thing, commonality that I heard here was, I think you had some trust build up, or way to measure trust within a community for the shared economy. This is very similar, but it is influence. How much influence does this person have, and some kind of reward and traction built into that for giving. I don't know if any of that made complete sense to anybody, but I just thought that I'd put that out there.
What's the name of it? I'm sorry. Is there a name already? Oh, beta name?
Yeah, so charitize.click.
Charitize.click.
Any other
I think it's less of a question, but just encouraging, maybe something like that. You're ready to go to market. Who are your go-to-market partners? Don't be afraid to reach out. I made one phone call when we were about to. It was the phone call prior to me knowing I needed investment. When I made the phone call, I got a free trade show booth. That exact trade show was in my city. That exact moment I needed it. And it's like you don't get $2,000 free 10x10s if it's not a sign, if it's not faith, and if it's not time to bang on doors to get money. So if you're ready to go to market, reach out. I know I just met the owners of now Sevenly. Sevenly is one of the largest charitable cause-based fashion sites. You never know, there could be some strategies because they're starting to bring all the verticals together. So reach out for those partners when you know it's time, because that's like a statement of faith. Is here, watch me. And sometimes we'll say 50-50. And sometimes you may say, yeah, we're gonna do this. It's 50-50. Like, if we don't do it, we don't know. So just to encourage you guys, step across that line with that type of boldness, and God will bring a huge breakthrough.
Anything else? Did it bore you all, guys?
I just want to say thank you. I didn't know a group like this existed.
We exist, come back.
I was hadn't done anything to. I've been not procrastinating, but not making big strides on my side for a little while, trying to decide how much to move forward, and I'm inspired. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
And I'll just quickly jump on that. So before I came out to Austin, which was only 2.5 weeks ago, I got together with my prayer group, and I'm just like, please pray for me for protection. I'm going to America, and and I'm going to Texas. It's just a godless nation. So like last night, I see this email come through at Capital Factory, and it says there, big bold, tomorrow night there's Christians. I phone my wife. I'm like, there are Christians in Austin.
There are.
All places.
It's like you can tell everyone to stop praying now. It's fine. I'll be alright.
Please have them continue.
Yeah, but thanks, Mark. That was great.
Awesome. Cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I'm just trying to close this out, but I have to say that this is actually the first time I've gotten to hear Mark give that. And, I don't want to offend anybody, but if you didn't resonate with some part of tonight, I think you're in the wrong place. Because that was incredible. And, I really enjoyed hearing everybody's work, that you did today at the tonight. So everybody had great ideas. Thanks for coming. Obviously, we can hang around and talk. What I really want to do is encourage. This is about the rubber hitting the road. It's just like being in the Word and getting out of the Word and realizing now you have to live your life. And now, does it really matter anything you read if you don't walk it out? So we've been talking about community, and that's the big message here, that if we just, for this group, if we just keep leaving this room and 90% of the room changes over next time we meet, and we never see that 90% again, you know, did it really matter? So, as with anything, you know, it's gonna take you, and that's what I'm wanting to encourage you to, and directly through, you know, get involved on the Slack site, and you know, continue to come back when you can. Obviously, you can't make it every time, but with that, I think we're done.
Cool, thanks.
All right, thanks, guys.
Feel free to network and chat and stuff.
My wife, I want to pick your brain before you take off. My wife made me I'll drop it. Yeah, I deal with screen printing, apparel, brand development. So yeah, I had a Christian clothing line. I actually left it in the car, but it's usually something I can write out and I can take it on my phone.
Have you been coming? No, it's my first time. I've been in like the little meetup group, and I used to tutor every Tuesday night, but I could never really make it. Right. And then I moved my tutor to not Tuesday, it's like a cup. Right.
Well, are you north or south?
I'm in Temporary right now. I live in far east on like 130 and 290.
Oh, okay.
But I'm only there for the next weekend, and then I deal with stuff. I'm not really sure where else. Probably north.
Probably north. Well, if you end up north, then Mark and I are doing stuff like lunches and things like that.
Yeah, I love
trying to get things, not just for these big meetings, but trying to get more interaction, more regular.
I was thinking like when you were talking like have someone who wants to be like consistent and like help out in that way. I mean, I always appreciate this.
Yeah, some people will come from like over there.
Yeah, let me know if you need any help with anything. And,
yeah, absolutely. You know, you can reach out to us through the sites and through emails and everything else. Here at I'll give you my card if you have that. Yeah, right. Nice to have you. And do you currently go to a church here?
Yeah, I'm a I've been going there for a while. I go to
They have. Oh, Runberg. I'm thinking. Some reason I thought you were talking about a south location, then all of a sudden you jumped north.
Oh no, but they do have like they have like games.
Right. Okay. So they're all over.
Yeah,
so this is my pastor actually. Renovate. We're a church plant in Cedar Park. So we have a number of awesome churches that are on our board. But yeah, Dave was a Houston Rocket basketball player in the NBA back in the day. He was part of an athletic ministry actually was here in town, and he's been he just moved back here. Let me find out who's strokes. Okay.
I'm just exhausted.
Yes, thanks so much. It's really good. I love your. I mean, Turkey's been by nation. Yeah, we had another reason
Turkish believers?
Go to college. Turkey? No, these are not the
Okay. Which one? Recently?
Yeah, last year. I was at the Western for a year, so I did their.
Good to meet you. Yeah.
I'm out there. Phase 1 and phase 2. But I was in their phase 2 and we were living in Far West. Quick question. I love Aaron, who's
I know a lot of the I always try to be the connection of the church in town. Yeah, take care. Yeah.
But it's amazing. My heart is from this world too. I mean, I grew up as a Hindu. My dad just got married.
It was great for me. I'm gonna go get this meeting, so if I don't get back in time, I'll be here.
Persecution is like something that I feel like I understand, right? But a little, not
Yeah.
but
I mean,
Sorry to interrupt, I just wanna say bye.
no, go for it.
pleasure.
Really pleasure, thanks so much.
Yeah, I mean, so,
Do you have a card?
you know, the stories of persecution are so dramatic, to be honest. I mean, I had friends who were killed, but that's incredibly rare.
Yeah, it is.
But there is that cultural pressure.
Fear is there, and fear is
And so, you know, it's
Part that I don't talk about often.
yeah, I go to Turkey about 3 times a year still.
I really want to go.
It's a great place. I mean, the dictator's not so great.
Yeah.
But, I was just there.
That's a lot of where the design
I'd love to. This is my first time at this meeting, and I'm wanting to come. I've been in a little meetup group for a long time, but I just tutor teaching that. I need to go to this. I'm free Tuesdays, and I want to be like consistent and like help out whatever way you need.
Well, here, and you know, one of the things I put is you be the community you want.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's one of those things that you know, we throw lunches, we throw happy hours,
Get a shirt.
like I try to do this sometimes at Northwest, Jim tries to do them, but it doesn't mean like anybody else can do this. Let us know if somebody wants to do this. We can do it. Or let us know like, hey, I want to help MC the next event. Then, North Side only lives, but we need the people to take this responsibility because I realized last year I was the linchpin.
Yeah.
Like I was leading every meeting for 4 years.
I know, that illustrates that when I left, it was,
So my goal is not to let this fall, especially since I'm interviewing.
raising up millimeters and
Yeah, so I'm trying to raise up new people. You know, you have to have a passion for it. And we have about 80% of every meeting. So I don't know what that means. It could be good, it could be bad. I've always had to say, people tell me for what they need. And
a couple times I hope somebody has the templates, right?
maybe they, got all they needed.
Did they hand the video camera on?
Yeah, they had the camera.
Because I invited a guy. I didn't talk to him running it. It was recently featured in a oh, he would love to see you.
I mean, I don't know if it was useful. I literally made it last night.
So where do I find the video?
It'll be on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be YouTube under Awesome Tech Live, and I'll share it too. I'm going to a place called Revenant. Yeah, but I used to go to the Austin Stone. Well, there's a North one, which is a place called Northwest Fellowship. I'm looking for that community. Talking about it.
That was hard. I was the same job on campus for a while, and then I turned into any office.
And the reason I left Austin Stone is, I'm actually fairly transparent, is that I used to be on the leadership team for Missions, and then they did this one weird thing.
Yeah.
And it went live.
Oh, like, okay, so you're with Ryan King.
Yeah, I know Ryan. They took it.
They went to launch global. They have no take over. And they're kind of like, they're running their, yeah, and it's a little.
So they started supporting so I'm very much into theology. I run a site called Biblical Theology. How do you get from each but it's a consortium of mission organizations that believe that missions has gone wrong.
We need to share it. She tries to
Where with the Bible translators taking making Muslim-friendly scriptures completely useless. You have organizations like Frontiers, which is basically Jesus followers of Muslim followers of Jesus, which aren't Christian. They see themselves as Muslim.
Yes, I've definitely heard that and seen that.
And the Stone allow this. And I spoke with the elders, I talked to Andy ad nauseum, talked with Ryan, and before him Joey Shaw.
Yeah, Joey Shaw.
And, you know, and I'm just like, you guys have partnered, you know, I don't even know if they're still partnered with the Frontiers, but they were like hip to hip with Frontiers. So I'm like, Frontiers is, there's no other question about it. The leadership, it's not like the leadership is gorgeous. It's top down, right? And I'm like, you know, the stone is completely, the theology of the stone is contrarian. Right?
It's so very interesting. I've noticed that as well.
Yeah, for 6 years I was in the stone, arguing, trying to convince them, showing biblical. And the thing is, the elders agreed with me, like the elders I talked to, but they kept on adding more and more elders. So I could never convert. I could not change it. And nobody could, and I'm like, you're sending missionaries overseas with organizations that are heretical.
They're not building churches.
They're not building churches. They're heretical. Like, it's not even that they're building heresy.
A lot of my are not being sent. Right. I mean, I just see that mission is not going well, and then so many friends are leaving their groups.
What happened was, so when they started these TOAG groups.
Yeah, the TOAG.
Right?
I did that.
Well, you may not know this, but TOAG originally was having Christians going to the mosque here pretending to be Muslim.
Yes, so I've heard that. I've heard that.
I got called into the mosque.
The New Oasis Mosque.
Yes, I got called in and I had to explain to the imams, like, I don't know what's going on there. These people are not following Christ. The Muslims were asking me, the imam asked me, is like, is it okay for Christians to lie? And I'm like, no,
it's not. Yeah.
And if you ever see anything like this, let me know, because that is not godly. And then I had to meet with these people and really chastise them. Some of them thought they were doing the greatest thing. Some of them actually viewed me as bad. And like, I'm just like, what's going on here? Like, you know, and so over the years, and I could go into ministry. You want to know what saves Muslims? The gospel. You know what saves, what the gospel is? It's like the gospel, pure, unadulterated, bold gospel. You don't need like, missions is becoming cultural, right? They have to be contextual. Why? The gospel it's already contextual.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. And so that's when I left this. I just couldn't do it anymore. There was a couple other things that they did. There was a Turkish friend of mine who was in ministry. They put his name all over the internet.
I have a friend who's struggling with that right now. She's trying to take an article down. She can't go to the movies.
The stone wouldn't take it down for 2.5 years. And that's when I'm like,
You know, I sit down and
hey,
Thanks so much for that. I appreciate it.
my pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
I'm going to probably see you again, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll grab lunch. We'll do it. Yeah, I have your number.
That'd be great. Thanks. Cool. All the best, guys. Cheers.
But anyways, you know, so I love it. I hate it because I'm really classed by the theological mind I am to any church.
It's important to be theological because I feel like sometimes the church, like I heard it spoken this way, like you start with like a 2x4, and then like the church theology will add maybe an inch. They don't really realize it. And then 10 generations down the line is completely.
What happened was, and this is what happened. Church is very young leadership was, still is, and they were growing fast, which meant didn't think they were doing
So it's a personal invitation.
They created this mission department. They believe in order to get more college students to go into mission, they have to make it cool. So they created the 100 people network. Why 100? I don't know. Why not 1,000? Why not 10? I actually argue, send 10. Send 10 really well.
The number, it's not about the number.
And so anyways, what happened was they let the missions department lead missions. And what happened is the orthodoxy
got separated
from the orthopraxy. Right? And so the reason I left from the stone wasn't the orthodoxy, it was the orthopraxy was wrong.
I mean, they have great beliefs, it's just they do not. I agree. Because it's like, when you try to talk to the stone leadership, and you go talk to their pastors, and you go talk to the 100 people I work with, you're talking to two different people.
It's like completely different things.
Complete disconnect, and it's really,
it's not helpful. Anyway,
I'll send you an email.
Did you want to talk about anything?
Yes, those are these time frames in my life. You know, I feel it's like kind of, there's just so many things that can ask me about, and I just like, I know my alley. Just
you know.
I don't even know. I didn't even think
Right.
As far as like, so you've done both investment and.
I think that's.
So I've gotten investment, I've also gotten volunteers, right?
Judging whether it's God's will
I've
by the
had
success or failure of
teams
it.
that were a part
and
of
it's
the company, so I've gotten outsourced, and of course, the
some of
people
that,
who
some
were part
of
of
the
it, and
success
then I've got
may be
people
related
who
to
were
tax.
volunteers. So I've had all different forms. Volunteers don't work.
God doesn't have us do everything.
Volunteerism, and it's not because they like
succeed in our.
they had all the best intentions.
And we have to have the courage to go out there and do it regardless of whether we're going to end up succeeding or not. And it's hard. And I'm in the middle right now. We're both jobless in a sense. I started a company in January.
So what I would do
and I'm not
is,
making any money, you know, and I've got
you need to
kids,
find
wife, and
that technical
you know,
co-founder.
she's wondering why I'm not out.
That technical co-founder
frying,
needs to have the same vision as you.
at the thing.
They need to be able to build themselves.
Yeah, you know.
What if they don't like fully believe in
But just
like.
because it's not working right now doesn't
Well,
mean
and
it's
that's
not
the thing, is
God.
like, you need to figure out like,
And so, but you know, you gotta stay around, you
are
gotta
they,
stay.
can they understand where you're coming
You gotta
from,
be.
completely accept it,
You know, when to listen
right?
to counsel.
And they're okay with it, knowing that this is the motivation.
Doesn't know
And if
necessarily.
they can't, then it's not a problem,
It is a
right?
it's just a challenge.
If they're not on board
around you
with
in similar
purpose,
situations.
right? Because I've had people in my
And it's,
companies, I run
you know,
companies,
as I'm doing
and like the company I ran in Turkey, the co-founder wasn't a believer, but he was 100% on board, right? Because the idea was great, and it made money. Who can't be on board with that, right? And the altruistic purposes didn't matter. Like, he wasn't a mean guy, he was all good for altruistic purposes. He knew I was a missionary, that was also doing business. So, you know, I didn't have anything hidden.
And I like
Right?
that, but that's the other thing.
I was who I was, right?
Right.
But he had personal problems, and that was the problem. Right?
Yeah.
Not
So, should I
the
keep,
Christian
should
has.
I just
And
keep
of course, everybody has
sex?
problems.
I've read that book
Christians.
about God.
So,
Yeah, should I keep pushing?
Tim wrote a good book.
You know,
Every
so
that's
you
what
know,
I
you
say,
got,
I
you know,
think
it's not marriage.
And it's like,
You know, you can create a relationship, you can create a relationship. Make sure if you